as you know that we are living through some tough economic times in Canada, and most of us, the immigrants who move from other countries to Canada, are considering getting out of Canada and moving to other countries like US. And I just invited one of my friends onto my podcast, and we discussed holistically about the process, the entire journey that he has taken to get out of Canada and move to US, the differences between living in Canada versus in the US, the pros and cons, the living cost, the schooling, the career opportunities, and type of the visa that we need in order to get into the US. So we talked about holistically. The purpose of this meeting is not to bash about Canada. It is just to compare the living cost, the overall lifestyle between Canada and the US, just to give you some perspective in terms of if you want to take this journey, what you need to do to start your process, file up the application, find the opportunities, and get into the US. So I'm sure you will get a lot of value out of this video. If you please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel so that I can continue producing more videos like this. Let's get into the podcast.
Thanks everybody joining my podcast. Today I invited my friend. Actually, he's my one of my friend's friend, Bahroz, and we have talked each other. We have some shared common interest, and because there's so many things happening in Canada, a lot of people are considering moving out of Canada, and Bahroz has actually taken this journey. So I thought maybe it's good to invite him and then learn from his experience in terms of what are the pros and cons and challenges and options to consider moving out of Canada, and maybe consider US as a location where you can move, work, live there, and perhaps retire at some point as well. So before further ado, I invite Barrows. Barrows, thanks for joining my podcast. Why don't you introduce
Thank,
yourself?
thank you, Yasin. So, Yasin, first of all, you're doing some amazing work with on your channel and the kind of content you post. It's lovely. So keep doing that. Thank you. I enjoy it a lot. I see it a lot. I share it a lot as well. So keep
Thank
doing
you.
that. Now, with regards to my intro, so I'm originally from South Asia, Pakistan. Studied there. I started working with Procter and Gamble in Pakistan. 5 years in Pakistan, and then I moved to Middle East. So 7 years in Dubai, and then we decided to move to Canada. So I had to do a reset of my career, which is kind of very typical when you have to move to Canada as an immigrant. So I started almost from scratch and then made my way back up to where I was in my career. So we lived in Canada for around 5 years, and then we decided to move to US. So it's been almost 2 years, slightly shy of a few months, that we moved to US. So I am in Massachusetts now, and both me and my wife work for a company called Lego. Probably most of you know that. It's a toy company, and yeah. So that's quick intro on me.
Well, I think it's quick to summarize, but I think it's a long journey for sure, right? So, the if you have taken multiple immigrations, from Pakistan to Middle East, to Middle East to Canada, and now Canada, from Canada to US. So they're like four different locations, right? So it's a lifetime, if you think about that. But yeah, definitely there must be some interesting stories that you would like to share, and we also like to learn from you. So folks, we're gonna cover three major points here. So the first one is, we understand, okay, what are the pros and cons in terms of taking this move, because it's a big move, right? So when you move to Canada, you bring your capital, you bring your family, you build your house, you grow your kids. At some point, if you decide to not to live there anymore, it's a big decision, and there's a lot of things at stake, right? Finances, your job, your career, and then of course when your kids are growing up here, so they have their friends. So it's a big move to consider. So I definitely would like to touch upon all of these topics. So we're going to cover the pros and cons. We're going to cover journey Barrows has taken from here, and then in general, if somebody wants to move from Canada to US, regardless of their profession, what are the options? What can they do to take this move and then successfully move out of Canada and move to US in any state? So those are the three main topics, and then we will further go into the subtopics as we further go along. So yeah, Barrows. So let's start with your journey first, right? So in terms of what are the pros and cons you consider, while you were living here in Canada, and what motivated you to take this move to Canada, to US?
Yeah. So Yasin, when I moved to Canada, the idea was to um, get a second passport and be in the developed world, and that was all the intent. And we weren't sure if we will live in Canada for long or not, but we were sure that we will get a Canadian passport. But while living in Canada, I realized one is that I took a hit on my career, and the challenge with Canada is that it's a very competitive landscape. Like there are so many skilled laborers who are coming in Canada, while the opportunities are not at par with the kind of or the quantity of the talent that exists in Canada. So I realized that for me, if I continue to work in Canada, I will not be able to reach the career ladder that I was rising. And I'm pretty ambitious guy. At least I am till now. And I wanted to have that career growth. And I realized it's very difficult to get it in Canada. It was very easy, and by easy, I don't mean that it wasn't that me I wasn't working hard. It's more that there are more opportunities available. So there were a lot of opportunities available in Middle East. Middle East was growing back then. Coming to Canada, it all stalled. So I always knew that for me to grow in my career, I cannot just stay in Canada. So that was one primary reason. Second was, again, when I was in Middle East, I was earning good income, very good income, and it was all tax free. So the amount of wealth that I could generate living in Dubai was at a very different level versus what was in Canada. Now there are positives of Canada as well, and that was the reason I moved to Canada, and I'll hit on those as well. However, from financial point of view, I realized that I will not be able to reach financial freedom while living in Canada, or if I stay in Canada for very long. So I have to move out. So career is important, which was more for me to develop, me to grow, and some ego as well, because back then in Middle East I had a good career and I was rising the corporate ladder as well.
Mhm.
And the second piece was financial as well. That financially, I won't be able to retire early. I won't be able to generate the wealth. And the third thing was around kids and kids education and schooling. So um, let me quickly talk about the maybe the money piece, if that's where we want to go first, and then I'll hit on the career
Sure.
and the schooling piece as well. On money, and I made a video on my channel as well on this, where I compared the kind of incomes you can make if you are in a 9 to 5 job between US and Canada. Big picture, the salary that you see, if you go online now on LinkedIn or on any website
Sure.
that provides you the salary ranges
Yeah.
for any job, let's say it's a finance manager job, you will find that, let's say, Canada is paying you 100,000 Canadian dollars. For the same job in US, you will make 100,000, but US dollars, which is 30% uh, on
More.
appreciated or
Yeah.
better or higher value versus Canada. So you get a 30% benefit there and then just because of the salary
Right away. Yeah.
right away.
Hmm.
Second piece that is the cost. So this is the income you'll get more. Another element on the income is, before moving to the cost, is tax. So the taxation is lower. Like versus Canada, it depends on which state you are in. But for me, the tax is lower by around 5 to 10%. So that's another benefit. So 30% benefit in the income, another 5 to 10% benefit you get in the tax. Then comes the cost of living. So in cost of living, the cost of items that you purchase, the shopping, the grocery, is same as Canada. I didn't see any difference. Like the coffee that I buy at Starbucks rather is slightly 1 or 2 percentage points expensive versus Canada. So
Hmm.
probably because people make more income in US, so it's easier to charge higher in US versus what you could charge in Canada. However, the
That's
sales
interesting.
tax.
Yeah.
Sorry, you want to say?
Yeah. Complete your thoughts, and then I'll ask question.
Yeah, however, the benefit you get is on the sales tax.
Mm.
So the GST is around 13% or 15% in Canada, while it's in the state I am in is 6.5. And it depends on the state where you live. But I don't think there is any state which would be more than 7 or 8. So you get another 5 percentage points
Okay.
benefit just from GST. However, apples to apples, just the price of the product is almost the same.
Hmm. So that's an interesting thought, because I think this is similar to here. If you move to Alberta, there's no provincial tax, right? So you save a little bit of money in terms of paying taxes in Alberta compared to Ontario or any other province in Canada. But because Canada, it's a very cold country, so a lot of stuff that we consume here, we import from other countries like Mexico or in the US. So I thought, those products that we import here, that might be a little bit expensive because, we are importing, and then of course we are paying this in Canadian dollars. So of course, when the Canadian dollar gets depreciated, it becomes more expensive, right? So that's an interesting thought. You don't find those products, a little bit different. I always thought, those products are always expensive here than the US.
Yeah, Yasin, I thought the same as well. And frankly speaking, because I have a channel where I talk about personal finance as well, I did a comparison on Starbucks. And maybe Starbucks is not a staple product, and
Right.
it's a bad comparison,
Hmm.
but at least it's very like you comparing Starbucks to Starbucks, not like Starbucks to Tim Hortons.
Hmm.
And similarly, groceries like key items like eggs or milk, I've done that comparison. The price is exactly the same. It's just that when you pay GST now, of course, you don't pay GST on grocery items or most of the grocery items, so which is a kind of an apples to apples comparison. So when I was coming here in cost of living, I was like, okay, I want to see a benefit in my shopping bill or in the grocery bill, but I'll see the benefit in primarily from the shopping side on the
Hmm.
GST. The next one is insurance. As you know, insurance somehow, and I just don't get it, why insurance is so expensive in Canada. And especially, I remember when I was coming as a new immigrant, it was extremely high. It came down over a period of time, but it was extremely high.
And you talk about auto insurance, right? Not
Auto
home
insurance,
insurance.
sorry,
Yeah.
good.
Hmm.
So, auto insurance, I think I was paying around $400 for one car between me and my wife,
Oh
auto
wow.
insurance when I came to Canada, like in the first six
Yeah.
months. And here, when I came, the first 6 months, I was paying around $95 for one car. Now it's US dollars, so you can make a comparison. It would be 110 Canadian dollars
Hmm.
between me and my wife for just one car.
Wow,
Now the
that's a
Canadian insurance did come down over a period of time. It started with 400 and eventually came down as well. But still, the starting point in US was extremely low.
hmm.
So that's another piece where I saved a lot of cost.
That
And
was
then,
also one of the shock that I experienced when I moved to Canada. So I moved from UK, right? So in UK, the car insurance is much cheaper compared to Canada, and I realized, the amount of money that I'm paying on monthly basis here is actually for the entire year in UK, believe it or not. So
wow,
that was a big
wow.
difference for me as well.
But and I just it beats me why this is so like what makes the insurance so high. I assume these insurance companies are making a lot of money by keeping the
Yeah,
rates so
who
high.
knows? Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, there could be other factors as well. I mean, of course, in the last 2 years, the car theft has skyrocketed here in Canada, especially in Toronto. That, of course, is playing a big part. But you're talking about way before that, right? So you're talking about like 2016, I guess, 2017.
yeah,
Back then, the car,
2017
yeah.
exactly.
So back then, the car theft was not that of a big deal compared to now. But still, yeah, it's too expensive.
Again, talking about cost of living, the next item is around fuel. So in fuel, obviously, the fuel cost is cheaper here
Mm,
in US versus Canada. But Yasin, all in all, when I did the math, like including the income, the tax, the cost of living, and rather before I even conclude all these, there is a cost which you pay here which is not in Canada, which is healthcare cost.
mm,
So I pay around $600 for my family, which is shared between me and my company. So the company pays, I think, around $800. I pay around $600, so it's around $1,400 for a family of four that we pay as insurance. It's very good quality insurance. So that is one cost that anyone who's moving from Canada to US should take into
consider
consideration.
that. Hmm.
But if I put all in all, sorry, I continue to go all in all, but there is one more, which is housing. So the housing, for me, the amount of rent that I was paying in Canada is similar to what I'm paying in US. However, my quality of living is 10x better. Like I have a very big lot house. It is one of the best cities in the area I'm living in, Massachusetts. So I would say easily you can choose to maintain the same cost that you're paying in Canada, but you'll get the quality of life in terms of housing will increase tenfold. Or
Hmm.
you can maintain the same quality of life and decrease your housing expense significantly. Now, the state I'm living in is still expensive in terms of housing compared to states like Texas or the ones that are more Midwest or South. So it's still expensive relative to US,
Hmm.
and but not as expensive as Canada. With that said, the West Coast is even more expensive. So if I have to rank, it would be West Coast is very expensive in US, East would be second, and then South and Midwest are the cheapest in terms of housing. So for me, moving to Massachusetts, call it East Coast, if I add all of this together, like housing, fuel, insurance, sales tax, medical, everything,
Hmm.
income, I come to a point where I can easily say that if you're moving from Canada to US, you can expect a 30% increase in your income. Like if you're
Overall,
earning $100,000 overall, like this is with cost of living and
right?
help from cost of living and the medical
Okay.
all adjusted. Because what happens is whatever you save on the cost of living, you pay in the health insurance,
Healthcare. Yeah.
healthcare. Yeah, so that kind of washes out. So
Okay.
net net, what you're left with is lower tax, higher income, which is around 30 to 35% more. 30%, as I said, is just apples to apples comparison
Mm.
because you get the same salary in here in US dollars, there in Canada, the same absolute number, plus you save another 5% tax. So I would say easily you can expect 30 to 35% increase if you come at the same role. And by the way, I came at the same role.
Hmm.
I I got that role back when I was in Canada. I was head of e-commerce finance for Lego Group, and on the same role, I came to US. So it was an apples to apples comparison for me, which was very easy for me to say
So they
30
kept your
to
salary
35%
same as
change.
you were in Canada, but they converted into US dollars, right?
Exactly. So they gave me the salary which was at par for the level that I'm here, which is
Hmm.
kind of the similar in US dollars in the same amount in Canada. And
Okay.
I did a comparison as well when I got went on Indeed.com and I saw other salaries as well. Like if you put finance manager, marketing manager, and all, you'll find more or less it is the same absolute number.
Same.
But again, USD has a higher power by 30%.
Okay. Going back to the healthcare, I think there was another thing, and correct me if I'm wrong. So you pay on monthly basis towards your medical insurance, but let's say when you go to see the doctor or specialist, you also have to pay some percentage of the doctor fee at the time of visit. Is that correct?
Yes, so I pay $25 every time I have to visit a doctor or I go for emergency. So,
Okay.
and that I also included in the numbers I shared with you. That's also included. That's why I say everything you save from the GST, the fuel, the insurance, it gets washed out with the health. So you should
Okay.
not expect that your spending would change. It's just
Mhm.
your income goes up and taxes go down.
Right. Okay. That's a good way to look at it. Okay. And I think this also depends upon state to state, right? So let's say if I move to Texas, then of course maybe I'll be able to save more compared to if I move to Massachusetts, for example. Is it a right way
Of
to
course,
look at
yeah.
it?
So I would say if you move to the West Coast, the saving will be less. East Coast would be second, and if you go South or Midwest, it would be third. Now, the Midwest challenge would be finding jobs because the economy is in the East Coast and West Coast,
Correct.
and probably some in South as well. So
Mm.
Texas, yes, but then it depends on what kind of field you are in. So, for instance, the field that I am in is corporate finance for CPGs, and there are more CPGs which are in Chicago area, East Coast, and West Coast.
Mm.
There aren't any in the South. So for me, it's difficult to go there. And I would say, whenever you have to make a choice between where you want to move, whether it's a state, whether it's a country, I think there are two primary reasons people should consider. People think about all of the things like weather, all this. Those are important, but they are minor things. The two important things are finances, so economics, where you can find a job and where you can make good money, and second is social circle, because there are opportunities that I do get in the Midwest, but I know if I go there, I know no one there. Like I
Mm.
don't have a social circle. It would be very difficult for me to find or make new friends there.
Right.
While it's much easier for me to do it in the East Coast, and I know I can do it in the West Coast as well. So for me, it's whenever I look for a job, I look for the big cities like Chicago, East Coast, or even in Texas, it would be the big cities that I would be looking for. So keep in consideration economics and the social part,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, everything boils down to this.
Yeah. And I think there is another factor that I would also consider if I wanted to make a move, and I think most of the Canadians right now would consider as well, is the deteriorating condition of Canada's economy. And like when I moved to Canada in 2016, it was a much better country. And in the last 2 years, I'm literally seeing the economic conditions in Canada are literally going really, really down. Like the graph is completely going down when you look at the GDP per capita. And And when you look at the government, they're running huge fiscal deficits, which is going to contribute towards more depreciation of Canadian dollar against USD. And that will always have downward pressure on our finances, our spending. Of course, the inflation will continue to stay higher. So I think if I look, from a future horizon perspective, that will be one of my bigger concern. That if I see my purchasing power is keep going down because the government, incompetent policies, then of course I would be very concerned about my future, especially for my kids. So that would, I think, a lot of my followers would consider, by looking at the financial condition, economic condition in Canada, and of course, US is also going down the same route, but of course, US dollar is still the king in terms of the currency in the forex world. So they would always have that edge compared to other currencies. So I think that would be one of the major decision factor for me, like if I would like to consider move.
Yeah. So Yasin, let me be very blunt then, which is when I say economics, this is what I mean by economics or the finances. So there's social circle and there is economics, and this is exactly what I meant by that. When I was making a decision between where to move after Middle East, so which country to move, UK, Australia, and Canada, the one reason, this is how I advise people as well, which is again, look at economics and social circle. And in economics, I tell them, if you have to make a choice between Australia, UK, and Canada, make a choice for Canada, because for me, Canada was not the Canada choice, it was the North America choice. Because I knew if I can move to Canada, I can eventually tap into the North American economy and the US economy, which is the world's biggest economy and
That's true.
has a lot of opportunities. And that's exactly how I played out for myself as well. So I moved to Canada, I got my nationality, and I realized this is not the place that I would want to live for long. Now, I may want to retire back in Canada at some point in time just because I have a bigger social circle there. But it depends. If I live here for another 10 years, maybe I make enough friends here that I continue to say, maybe I end up living here. But for now, if you ask me, probably I'll retire back in Canada just because I have social circle there. But economic wise, it was always my path was to move to US, because in Canada, I knew I won't be able to make my career, won't be able to make the income that I want to make. Finding job in Canada is so hard. In US, and I can say openly in this podcast as well, although I'm working with the company now, but I'm looking for a job. And the reason I'm looking is because our company has made a choice. They're moving to their offices, and I don't want to move with them. So I've told the company that I'm looking out, and they've given me some time to look out. So I'm looking out for a job, and there are so many opportunities. Like every every week, I get contacted by a recruiter because I've said on my LinkedIn that I'm available for work, and this is despite a lot of firing that is going on in the tech sector, by the way.
Mhm.
And they are very good paying jobs, so much so that I'm realizing that the amount of money even that I'm making today, I can make even better money than what the company is paying me, just because the amount of opportunities that are available here in US in terms of jobs. So income wise, US is the place. I would have never made the amount of income that I'm making here in US today, and the opportunity that exists once I change my job.
Mhm. That's for sure. That's true, because especially that condition is even went worse in the last 2 years when the immigration level has gone up significantly, and now we have much larger or bigger pool of resources available for jobs compared to the opportunities. So that delta between the amount of people are looking for job versus the amount of jobs available has gone much bigger. So I think that challenge is going to remain, for quite some time, until the immigration levels are under control, or the opportunities are created by the businesses, which is of course not easy in these economic conditions.
Yeah, and Yasin, the issue is also it's not bad talent; it's good talent. So it's very competitive to get a
Hmm.
job in Canada. So it's not like I'm the best, I'm very good at what I do, and I'll find a job. No, there are
Hmm.
so many good, best people out there in Canada just because how the immigration system works. It's just that the quantity of those people are so much and the
Yeah.
opportunity is so less. I was listening to this clip from Kevin O'Leary, and he was saying that uh, even the students who come here in US, like study from Harvard or the best of the universities, they they have to go back because, for instance, he was referring to Indian students,
Hmm.
and they have to go back, and they prefer not going back, and they rather move to Canada. And then when they come to Canada, it becomes more competitive for everyone in Canada to get jobs, because it's not just you are overloading the amount of population, but you're also overloading the skill.
the
which
labor
may
market.
be good in long term, but in short term, it's very damaging for people like me, you, who just have who just find
Yeah.
one job and a very competitive landscape to get their job.
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword because at one on one hand you get the best talent available in the market, but and on the other hand it actually creates more competitive environment for others. So the other people who are still in the market, they have to either upskill themselves or they will be left out. Because the talent is coming in is much more skilled or talented compared to the wider amount of labor market available.
Yeah, my frustration is not with the skill or the talent. My frustration is with the opportunities. Like
Yeah.
if you are bringing in 100 people who are extremely talented, then there should be 110 opportunities. But if there are 10 opportunities for 100 talented people, then
Mm.
I'm moving out because
Yeah.
I will go where I can find 100 opportunities. And
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I'm picking and choosing now where to go, which job to get, and because it's in Canada, I would be dying to get a job. Like I would be begging to get a job, and once I'm in, I would be like, I will do mop the floors, anything. Just don't let me go because
Yeah.
I know it would be very difficult for me to find a job outside. Here in US, I think even this quiet quitting phenomena is not a Canadian phenomenon. It was more of a
It's
US
more
phenomena
US.
because
Yeah.
people realize that they can easily quit and find better jobs.
So you talked about the healthcare. We understand there is a big difference in terms of paying for the healthcare service from your own pocket or from your insurance. But what about the quality of service? Like in Canada, if you have to go to emergency, you have to consider that you have to wait until like 10 hours or maybe 12 hours in the emergency before you can see the doctor. So tell us, what is the difference in terms of getting that quality of level of service in US?
Yeah. So, Yasin, let me talk about the good stuff of Canada first. I think the secondary care in Canada is amazing. I have not experienced it personally, but I know close family members who've experienced secondary care, and it is amazing. Like the care you get, and it was my brother, he went through a surgery. It was just phenomenal. The care and the service and everything. But that's it.
Mhm.
When it comes to primary care, it is impossible. Like every time I had to go and sit in an emergency, I stopped going to emergency. I was like, I'll just rather die in pain than go sit there in emergency and get more disease and more sickness just because there are other sick people and staying there for another 12, 13 hours. And so thankfully, so I never experienced the, except for once maybe, the emergency issue or the challenge in Canada. But I know a lot of people who've suffered from it. There was one example I remember. There was a child who had some kind of a concussion, and when the parents took the child to the emergency care, it took them 12 hours to service the child.
Mm.
And even after 12 hours, somebody told them just to create some drama around as if the child will die in the next 5 minutes if no one takes care of the child. And they had to act it out for them to get the service. Otherwise, it
Wow.
would have taken them even longer.
Wow.
In US, I've every time I went to an emergency, they served me in 15 minutes. That's it. And
Really? Wow, that's a big difference.
depend and different kind of hospitals. Like I've gone to a big hospital as well, or a very clinic emergency clinic as well. Like there is an emergency clinic 5 minute down from where I live, and they can take any emergency that I have, like
Mm.
quick emergency, in 5 to 10 minute service. So I don't even have to go to a big hospital, which was usually the case in Canada. You have to go to a big hospital. Here, there are emergency clinics within the cities where you can
Right.
just go and get the service. So,
Mm.
y- because usually the hospital is for not just for the city, but for cities
For the
around,
region. Yeah.
yeah, or the region. So they have
Mhm.
small clinics here and there, which are called emergency clinics. I can just go there and get my service. It is life changing. It is
Mhm.
life changing, and it is stress relieving as well. Knowing that if something happens to me, to my child, at least I can
Mm.
get emergency service. I know
Yeah.
I'm paying a cost for it, but as I said, in totality, that cost washes off with or it's paid off by the other savings that I do. So net net, it's kind of zeros out for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I think when it comes to life-saving treatments, Canada has one of the best doctors here, and then they can definitely do whatever is possible to save your life. But outside that, it's a struggle, and that struggle is gonna get even more harder, as we import a lot of people in this country, and of course I'm not seeing any news about expanding the healthcare from the government, right, compared to the amount of people that they're importing from other countries. So that imbalance is going to be one of the challenge in terms of getting the quality of healthcare service in Canada. So yeah, that's fortunate and unfortunate at the same time.
Cool.
So let's talk about the schooling. Your kids have started going school here in Canada, and then you moved to US. So what are the differences that you found compared to schooling in US?
It's a mega difference. Yes, I think if I have to put my finger on one thing, I think it would be schooling. And maybe it's just because my kids are getting older now and I feel more responsibility of a father than anything else. So
Mhm.
I would even rank it above the income piece. Income was important for me. I think that is why I moved. But now I realize whenever me and my wife, we sit down and say, okay, if we should we ever, if ever move back, and we go like, even if I start getting paid less because of the school, I would not move back.
Mm,
And let me give you some examples. So I was living in Markham. It's predominantly Asian area, and usually, where there are more Asians, the school rankings are higher. The school my kids were going into, its ranking was on Fraser's website was around 9. It was the school name was Beckett Farm. So if anyone wants to cross check it, they can check it as well. It was 9 ranking, which for me was in Canada, 9 ranking school is one of the best schools.
mhm.
And my daughter had 28 kids, and my son had around 30 kids in the class. And 2 teachers, one is the core teacher, one is a sub teacher. And here in US, my son has 12 kids in the class, and my daughter has around maybe 15, 16. So the level of attention significantly changed.
Mm,
I don't care if this whatever the school ranking is. If there is one teacher or 2 teachers for 15 kids versus 2 teachers for 30 kids, I
yeah,
would always prefer the school. I remember in that school in Markham in Canada, they also had portables. They didn't have space in the school. So they
yeah,
had portables where the kids would be taking their classes. And here it's like because they've they've not overloaded or overburdened the school system, it is just amazing. So
mhm.
that is core thing for me, which is the student to teacher ratio. People
Yeah,
usually go for rankings in terms of, I don't know, because the rankings is also dependent on every year kids appear on a test and the score of the test. Now there are a lot of kids, especially Asians kids, who study hard as well in at home or during break time, so they're good academically, but
mhm.
doesn't mean that the school is good.
Yeah,
So maybe the school is good for a top ranking child, but for an average child, it won't be good. This school
yeah.
in US where my kids go, it's like it's good for an average child as well.
Mhm.
So this is one. Second, the extracurricular activities are just phenomenal here. Like my daughter would struggle to get into a drama club. And again, just because when you overload a school with so many kids, a drama club or different clubs, she likes drama, that's why I'm calling out drama, but even sport clubs as well. Here, like we have to tell her to stop uh, attending clubs because she doesn't have time. She gets tired,
Mm,
and there are so many activities that go on in the school. For Canada, I had to find them activities outside the school. Now I do have activities in US as well outside the school, but if I choose not to, there are so many activities in the school already that help with their development and all. So it's
mhm.
we are extremely happy. Thirdly, speaking, which as I said, talking about high ranking child and average child. For instance, my daughter is very smart. She's good. She's intelligent. My son is more into other activities. Maybe it's a boy girl thing as well. Girls are usually more into academics. Boys are less.
Yeah,
And the amount of help he gets in the school with any subject that he's struggling with is just amazing. Like I hardly have to touch him at home for anything. In Canada, they would not even complain about my child not doing well because they knew that the moment they start complaining, I will ask them for help and they'll have to assign more teachers and more resources. Here, they automatically came. The teacher came to me in the first 6 months, said, "My son is struggling with XYZ things, and we've provided him an extra support." So he gets now an extra support in the school where he goes into a separate class for some of the subjects where they help him out and all. And again, this is all because the child to teacher ratio is just amazing.
Yeah.
So, man, I would say if anything, as a father, as a parent, I would move to US is because of the schooling. And this is, by the way, this is not a private school. This is public school I'm
That was
talking
my
about.
next question. So you're basically comparing public to public schooling system,
Apples to
right?
apples. Exactly,
Wow.
apples to apples.
Okay. And I remember, this whole teacher to student ratio was one of the big debate before pandemic between the teacher unions and the Ontario government. Doug Ford. And I think he was doing some measures to kind of increase the capacity in classrooms, so that would actually um, distort the teacher to students ratio. I remember that was one of the big debate, and teachers were pushing back because they were already burned out because of the workload that they carry, and the government was basically cutting funding and then pushing teachers to do more. So I think, yeah, this actually went even bad in the last few years, compared to what you were comparing. So okay, that's
And
interesting.
one more thing, Yasin, on let's talk about higher education as well, which is college.
Hmm.
I've I'm still away, like 5 years away from that. My daughter will be going into high school next year, but I've heard people talk about sending their kids to colleges. And there was one friend of mine I connected with, and we came from US. We were visiting Canada, and he said, "Don't send your kids for college education in Canada because again, it's very competitive. They don't have a lot of colleges, and it is very easy for them to reject students, and they prefer international students because they pay more. And that is why chances, even if your child is very, very, very good, the chances for them getting into a good college in Canada is very difficult. Now, the benefit is the Canadian colleges are cheaper than colleges in US. Colleges in US are very expensive, but you can get into those colleges if you save well for your kids, and you can still send them. In Canada, based on what I know for now, forget about being able to send your kids to any good college, even if you're ready to pay, because the seats are very, very limited. So that guy was actually saying, don't send. I was telling them maybe I'll send my kids to college in Canada because it's cheaper. He's like, you won't get them good education if you send them to college in Canada. Keep them in US, save for
Hmm.
them. If you are a good father, save for them, send them to good
Yeah,
college, but don't send them to Canada.
interesting. That's a good point. I think my kids are young as well, so I haven't even thought about the college or university education yet. But I think I have to start planning about it because it's gonna take a lot of my savings towards it. Um, okay, so let's move on to the second point, um, which actually your own journey. So I would like to understand, and my followers would like to understand as well, how did you start that journey? How did you start the process, so that they also learn, if they would like to follow the same route.
So, Yasin, there are three key main visa types that I know of, and there could be more as well. But for an average qualified individual, and what I mean by average, like I'm not a nuclear scientist, I'm not a media personality. So, otherwise, if you are like high demand skill, there are ways for you to get in. But for an average individual like an MBA like me, there are typically three ways to get into US for work purposes. One is H1B, the other is TN, and then there is L1. So let me talk about the least preferred to the most preferred. H1B is the least preferred. Here, what happens is the company sponsors you. So you apply to a company, they will sponsor you. And then if they sponsor you, they like you, you clear the interviews, then they will give you H1B visa. The challenge is there is a quota system. So every company gets few visas every year. So let's say the Lego group will get 30 visas, and so they can sponsor 30 H1B visas, and that's it. So it becomes very competitive, and you're not just competing with people who want to move from Canada, you're competing with people across the world because they offer H1B visa to everyone across the world. So even the talent in UK and India and Middle East, everyone, you're competing with them,
Mm.
and the seats are very limited. So it's very difficult to get H1B visa. Now, if you're lucky enough to get the H1B visa and then you move to US, it is very difficult for you to convert it into green card. The reason it is important to convert it into green card is because if you lose your job while being on H1B, I think you have like 60 days to leave the country, or find another job. And again, the challenge is same. The quota is limited. It's
Yeah.
competitive, so it would be very difficult for you to find another job, and for another company to sponsor you. And it is also costly for them to sponsor you. So they rather pick someone who is a local talent
Mm.
as against trying to pick you. So you're not preferred, and when you're not preferred, it's more competitive as well. So I don't recommend coming on H-1B visa, especially because if you lose your job, imagine me moving my family, moving my kids, even purchasing a house here. Let's say I didn't purchase, but if let's say someone decides to purchase a house as well, you settle yourself here and suddenly you lose your job. So maybe it's still okay when you're young, you're just like you're in your early 20s, you're exploring, you come here, you do a stint, you do some work, and then you lose your job. It's fine, you can go back to any country or your home country. But for me, going back is not an option. My
Mm.
wife also has a job here, I have a job here as well, and all. The second visa is so H1B. I don't recommend, especially if you have a family. Second visa is TN visa. This is, I think, for Canadians and Mexico as well. This is also sponsored through the company. Like the company will sponsor your TN visa. However, there are no quota systems, so there is no quota. It is very easy for them to sponsor you on TN visa. There is a North American treaty that they have between Canada, US, and Mexico,
NAFTA.
so it's easy to get that visa. However, again, the challenge is if you lose your job, then there is another company that has to sponsor you. The good news is it is easy for the other company to sponsor you because there are no quotas. However, you still need to get sponsored. Otherwise, you'll have to leave US because you can't live in US on TN visa or till the time TN visa expires or whatever the number of limited days are for TN
Yeah.
visa.
I
I'm not
think,
an expert on TN visa.
yeah,
Sorry.
I think the amount of years you can spend on TN visas, I think 3 years, right? If I'm not
Yes.
mistaken. Yeah.
Yes. So you have to renew it as well.
Yeah.
There's a limitation from that angle. Now, the best one, which I came in and I was lucky, is L1. The beauty about L1 is, and I highly recommend anyone who wants to move to US, look for an L1 visa. The beauty about L1 is that it is a dual intent visa. What it means is that if you come on L1, you're already telling the US government that you will apply for green card ASAP. And
Mm.
whatever documentations you've given for L1 already, they kind of suffice as background check or background for your green card. So once you come on L1, you've already told them you will be applying for green card, and getting a green card is a breeze. So I landed here July 1st on L1. I applied for green card. I started the process. It took me some time, documentation and all. It took me like 3 months with the lawyer. The lawyer was a bit slow as well. And I applied for my green card in October, and I got it in August of next year. So around 11 months. It is that quick.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about H1B, now when you are on H1B, you can still apply for green card, but it takes years and years. And especially if you are an Indian,
Mm.
it's more challenging, or if you're Chinese, because it is based on quota. So every nation has a quota as well. And if you are an Indian, there are, given just the sheer size of Indian population, there are more people who have applied for green card or conversion of green card from H1B to green card, and hence there are limited seats. So
Right.
you don't get any of that challenge in L1. So I got my green card in 11 months.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the requirement for L1 is that you should be transferred through your company. So I was transferred through the Lego Group. Lego Group working in Canada, they transferred me to US. You should be working in a company for a year before they can move you on an L1 visa. And my L1 visa, I got it on the airport. So I took a flight. I gave my papers, documents to the person in charge there in the immigration. It took them 30 minutes to assess my documents, and they gave me the visa there and then. I got L1 visa, and I moved to US. So the only challenge is you'll have to work, or you have to find a company which is which also has an office in Canada, also has an office in US, and they're willing to move you. If that's the case,
Mm-hmm.
always go on an L1 visa and try to move with your company as against trying to find job. So for instance, if my intent was to move to US, I rather tell the Lego group, I want to stay with you, move me, and then move here and then leave them, versus leaving them and then trying to move here. So that's kind of one recommendation I have, which is if you have an option of L1 visa, just come on L1
Mm.
visa. Don't bother any other option.
Right. Right. So even if somebody um, is able to get TN visa, which of course any Canadian national can do that, right? So you always recommend to choose L1 over TN.
Yes, because you can convert L1 into green card. TN visa doesn't convert into green card. So if you come in on TN visa and then
Mm,
you apply for green card, let me take a step back. So why is green card important? The green card is important because if the Lego group fires me today on L1 visa, I'm back to Canada. So for
mm,
these 11 months, or maybe if you take those months where I was applying for the visa as well, 13, 14 months, I was slightly stressed. Like my career is going well, but things can change any day, right? So if I
yeah,
lose my job, then all this good school, the good healthcare, the good life goes
yeah,
away, and I'm back into Canada,
yeah,
where economy is not doing well, and all the bad things we've talked about Canada.
yeah.
So for me, it was very important to get the green card. With H1B or TN, the green card time is as
Much
if you
longer.
are applying for green card
Mm,
sitting in Canada. So as if you never had TN. So it's me like sitting in Canada and saying I want
mm,
to apply for green card in US. So it is kind of a process from scratch. As I
right.
said, L1 is it is called dual intent visa, which is once you get the visa, the intention is that you will stay in US. But TN they don't prefer, they don't want you to stay in US. It's not a dual intent, it's a single intent visa, which is you come
Mm,
here, you work and you get out. If you don't get out and you apply for green card, then
right.
they take you through the same rigorous process.
Okay. Yeah, that answers all the questions related to our section number three, which I wanted to understand the different types of visas and which one is preferred and what are the benefits. So, yeah, I think if and I think this is applicable on any profession, right? It doesn't differentiate whether you're an engineer or a doctor or economic or financial professional. So it applies to pretty much all the professions, right?
Yes, yes. Again, Yasin, the idea is route to green card. It
Hmm.
has to be green card. Like whatever visa you get, it has to be a route to green card. So get whatever visa, which is again L1 is the easiest route to green card.
That's good. It's good to know. All right, so I think this is very informative, Barros. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and experience and the journey that you have taken. I hope that the things will get even better for you in the U.S. And any last comment that you want to make for the audience?
Um, Thank you, Yasin. Again, thanks for inviting me. Again, I when I moved to Canada, I love Canada. So Canada is my second love after my family. However, things have changed since I moved and from the time I left. And now when I read a lot of news back then, it makes me sad. I hope things get better because, as I said, eventually I would want to retire in Canada. I have a good social circle there. I have family there. I have friends there. I want to live with them. And I hope that things get better and the economic situation, the infrastructure situation, and other social situations improve so I can have a good life in Canada eventually when I retire. So and for people who are coming as well, who are looking for jobs, who are moving to Canada for the Canadian dream, I hope they we get back onto the path of offering that Canadian dream to everyone. And again, thanks for inviting. It was wonderful talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for spending time with us, Barrows. And for folks, it's not a podcast to bash Canada in any shape or form. It's just to highlight some of those challenges that we are facing here in Canada. And if somebody wants to improve their life by taking one of those decisions, we just wanted to let them know that there are paths available, but there's by no means we are going against Canada in any shape or form. So I just wanted to clarify for the audience that I live in Canada, I love Canada, my family's here, but at some point I think the government policies are pushing me to take decisions. So that's where I'm also contemplating about my thought process as well. So anyway, thanks, Barrows, for your time, and I hope to see you again on my channel.
Thank you, Yasin.